So you've mentioned a few things there, like the mobile phones and the housing and things. Are there any other common sort of misconceptions that you find that people do hold about asylum seekers?
I mentioned mobile phones because just this week somebody came to me and said, hey, she said, there's a lady who has a shop on Borough Road, and she said she always gets people seeking asylum in there with a voucher where they can have a free mobile phone. And I said, that is just a load of rubbish. They just don't get mobile phones. What people get is £35 a week. While there's different categories of seeking asylum in that process, when people come into the country at the moment, they go through a screening process, and then if the Home Office believes their story or part believes the story, then they're released into the community, not to where they want to go, it's where the Home Office says they will live, and to a specific house. Quite often, particularly for single people, it's multi-occupancy. So we do get situations where different races are sharing the same house. You could have Christian people living with Muslim people, which isn't a problem necessarily, but people have different habits because of their cultures and different things which don't always mix. And they are in hard-to-let areas, really. They get £35 a week from the post office. Might be £35 and 10 pence, but it's £35 about that. That's while they're seeking asylum. If they go through the legal process and their case is refused, but the Home Office recognises that it's not safe back in their country, and provided somebody signs to say they will go back when it's safe to do so, they go into something called Section 4, for which the Home Office provides, or NAS, it's the National Asylum Support System. They supply a voucher. It's like a credit card, which is now loaded with £35 every Sunday, 1 minute past midnight on a Sunday night. But you can only spend it in Sainsbury's, Morrison's, Asda's, Tesco's, Boots and Peacocks. It gives you no access to cash, so if you want to get your hair cut, or if you want to go on a bus ride, or you just want to go and buy a newspaper, well, I suppose you could buy a newspaper from a supermarket, but it doesn't give you the basic dignity of having some cash in your pocket. Then you get people who, but at least they've got somewhere to live and they can eat. Some places refuse certain items of toiletry. Some places refuse you a phone card to top up, because people do have mobile phones because it's their only way of keeping in touch with people back home and solicitors, legal system. Then you get people who have been refused, who aren't yet removed from the country, and the Home Office stops all form of support. So they've got nowhere to live and have no access to cash or of any sort, and they live primarily on friends' charity, and places like the Refugee Service offer a bag of food and £5 a week from the Mary Thompson Fund, which is what different church groups donate to. And then you get people who've been very fortunate enough to get status, and then their status changes from being a person seeking asylum to refugee, and they get all the standard benefits that you or I would get, and they have to go on the housing list and get property. The downside for them is that they're quite often faced with an empty house, and I mean empty in a lot of cases. Nothing on the floor, nothing on the wall, and they've got to start from scratch. And I always use the example when my daughter moved out. She said, "Mum, I'm moving out." Yeah, okay. Can I take the bed? Can I take the sofa bed? Can I have sheets? Can I have pans? And yet, between us as a family, we all rallied together, and she was set up in a little flat. But the people that we support don't have that family network, and they rely heavily. Those who are fortunate enough to have places like ours around, they come and we help out with things like that. I've gone right off the point of what you said, but that's all right, because you said I could digress.
That's all right, that's fine.
Yeah.
Have you found any, have you personally found any particular highs or lows in your work that have really stood out?
I'll say the lows first. The lows are, for me personally, people, you build a relationship with people, and suddenly they're not there. We had a man who came to one of our drop-ins, he was from Sri Lanka, and he didn't turn up the next week, so we thought, oh, well, perhaps he's just can't come for whatever reason. He didn't come the following week, so we phoned up, and I went round to his house rather, there was nobody there. And then we phoned his housing provider to find out that the day after he'd been the last time, he'd been removed and was gone before we knew. So you don't even get an opportunity to say goodbye to some people. There's lots of things like that, frustrating. People who are returned, like a little girl. I call her a little girl because she was slim. She wasn't particularly young, but she was probably, well, younger than me. She was probably about in her early 20s. Her and her little toddler boy, 18-month-old, were whisked back to Congo. And you know, because we have contact with people, that they've been abused since they've been sent back. And it distresses me to think that our Home Office seems to lose the plot somewhere down the line. You know, people say, this is my story, and the Home Office will say categorically, we don't believe it, and that's really upsetting for everybody who does believe their story. And yeah, okay, there may be the odd person who doesn't perhaps tell the whole story, but I think that's sometimes out of desperation. But it's tough when people that you know have been sent back, and you know, like, they've gone into hiding because it's not safe for them to be out on the street. And I think the biggest thing of all is, for people in this country, we have no concept of what being persecuted is all about. And it saddens me when you hear, like, reports from, you know, like you do these, for example, Gazette Live. You look at a story on Gazette Live, and there's one particular story I looked at about this lad called Jean-Michel. I'll tell you about him in a minute. And when you read the adverse comments, he was interviewed by the Gazette and saying thank you for the people who supported him to prevent him being deported just before Christmas. And I just clicked on, because it said comment, so I just clicked on it. And some of those comments were some of the most racist things I've heard, you know, and I just think, how can people get away with saying things like that? So there are quite a few negative things, but I'm always lifted up by the positive things, because my life's been richly blessed by everything that I do, the people that I've met. I've met some fantastic people, people that I'm proud to call my friends now, you know, and just the whole thing of meeting people. And I went with a girl to the airport because she was meeting her son. She was from Uganda, and she hadn't seen her son for 5 years. And she got status and was able to apply for him to be brought over. And I was privileged to take her to Newcastle Airport, where she was reunited with him. And I was standing there crying my eyes out. She didn't, but it wasn't in her culture to cry her eyes out. I cry at airports a lot. But I've met some fantastic people. More recently, we had, I was just saying to one of your colleagues that we had a nativity called Light a Candle just before Christmas on the 18th of December. Every year we do a Christmas party, and this year we decided to have a nativity in the church before all the party started. And Rosemary is the minister at Avenue, and it was her baby really, but we worked together on it. So we had a Cameroonian Gabriel, we had 2 Congolese and a Cameroonian kings, we had a Iranian and Ivory Coast shepherd, and we had a Mary and baby who were Chinese, and we should have had a Chinese dad, but he had to work, and so Iranian dad stepped in as Joseph. It was fantastic. And at the end of the nativity, they didn't have to say anything. There was different people that they were paired up with, and at the end of the nativity, 2 of the Congolese lads had brought the African drums, and a 3rd Congolese man was playing the piano, and they were just absolutely, it was amazing. The church was rocking. And if you know Avenue Methodist at all, it's not a church that rocks very often. It's traditional, real traditional Methodist church with an average age of about 75. And I was so I was in the congregation when this African music was playing, and the lad on the piano was singing, and the 2 boys on the drums were like backing him, and it was just superb. And I just had to get up, and I went to Rosemary and I said, this is fabulous, and then went and sat back down again. And it's moments like that, you know, that keeps me going, and I hang on to the fact that, you know, that's really positive things that happen. Yeah, fantastic.
So from those early days of sort of being a little bit unsure of your faith but going in anyway, how does your faith now impact on the work that you do there?
I'm still convinced it's spirit-led. God gives me all the skills and the talents I need to do this job, and I give him all the glory, always have done. But I can look back, you see, and think, why did I go and work in a factory? Well, I think it was to give me a broader outlook on life. The RAF, my mum says, made me talkative. It's not quite what she says, but I was a very shy person. It was my family background that led me to want to leave home, really, and things that were happening at home, and I went in there. And civil service, I was a supervisor before I left, so it gave me organisational skills and things. And I'm sure I was being moulded to do this job. Sadly, we're all, as a lot of projects, we are funded. I'm funded by the Northern Rock Foundation. It's not a job I could do, or rather I'm not in a position where I can work without a salary. So if we don't get funding in August 2012 or before August 2012, the project's likely to close. But it's in God's hands, and if it's meant to continue, it will continue. And I think probably, if anything, my faith's deepened. I just trust that God's in control, really, and just he guides me all the way.
That's just brilliant.
Can I just tell you about Jean-Michel?
Oh, do, yeah.
Jean-Michel's a Congolese man. You might have seen it. If you get the Gazette, he was in the Gazette. He's been in a couple of times. He was went to sign at the police station. Everybody who's seeking asylum has to go and report to the local police station. And he went there at the back end of November and was arrested to be deported. He should have been deported that Monday, the following Monday. Anyway, we protested strongly, and so did he, and his deportation was halted. And then he was in a detention centre for a couple of weeks, and his solicitor fought for him to be released on bail. And so now we have a house guest. My husband and I decided to stand as sureties for him. He's a 44-year-old man who's got 6 children of his own back in Congo, and he fled for his life. He was a civil servant working at the airport, totally opposed to Kabila's regime, which is brutal. And he's experienced, since he left there, the fact that he had twin boys, the oldest ones, and the regime had heard that he was back in the country and went to look for him and saw the 2 boys and shot one of them, thinking it was Jean-Michel. I mean, I don't know why, because the boys were 18 and he then was 42. So we're very privileged to have him as our house guest until he's waiting now for a judicial review. I wouldn't have him. It's the person that he is why we decided that we would like to be sureties for him. And he calls me mum. Biologically, I am capable of being his mum, but I would have been a teenage pregnancy. And my grandson was in the car with me, and we were giving Jean-Michel a lift into town, and he got out and says, "Bye, mum, see you later." And my grandson said, "Are you really his mum?" I said, no. And that's just like a little thing, you know. And I would urge everybody, if you know, when you see stories in the paper, the Gazette is quite a supportive paper, really, the Gazette. If you have an opportunity to sign a petition or whatever, I would ask you please to do so, because it can be life or death for some people.
Yeah. Okay, that's brilliant. Is there anything else you want to say? Any more little bits?
You already have a box here, don't you? So we give out a huge amount of clothing and household goods to people, and we never say no to anything that people offer us. And lots of churches throughout the region have boxes like yours and donate clothing. It doesn't have to be brand new, but in a reasonable condition, although we do take rags as well, because we can sell them and plough the money back into the project. It was the rag money that funded our Christmas party. And if you're ever in Middlesbrough on a Wednesday between 12 and 2 particularly, just pop in, and I think you'll be amazed. Yeah,
So
very welcome.
Where's that box in our church? Oh, everyone knows, it's fine. So if you do want to donate any clothes or anything, apparently there's a box in the all cook room. But yeah, I don't know about everyone else, but I've learnt loads. So that was brilliant. So thank you so much for that. What are these?
I did bring these little books called Mythbusters.
Brilliant.
It's number 7, which is a sad indication that they need to keep updating it for the people who say, well, I don't agree with asylum seekers, but you know, this is just bust some of the myths that people think about people seeking asylum. So I think I've got enough for everybody if you want one. I think. But I can let Tim have some more if there's not enough here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll put those on a table over there, and you can have a look. But do come and chat to Linda at the end. You're free to hang around at the end. If you've got any more questions you want to ask for her. But other than that, I'd urge you really just to keep the project in your prayers.
Thank you.
And do pop in and visit if you get a chance. But thank you very much for coming and speaking to us. I've learnt loads, but just give Linda a round of applause.